Debbie Van Pelt. We're back today to talk about one of our wines named American Legend after the head horse handler or hostler here, Belle Meade, during the heyday of horse racing. He was the original horse whisperer and was famous for the work that he did with the thoroughbreds here. And we see him here on his horse, Bob Taylor. So there are tons of pictures of him all over this plantation because he was essential in the success of Belle Meade Plantation. He was brought here a slave, but was given his freedom after the Emancipation Proclamation. You'll remember the little cabin that we saw in the Founders Red episode. So he was given that cabin to just be on site, even though he had a beautiful home and went on to marry and raise a family in the Belmont neighborhood here in Nashville, Tennessee. He loved the horses. He never wanted to be too far from them. And so we're going to take you on a little visual tour of the stable house here. So the actual breeding facility was actually about 3 miles off property. That is something, if you know anything about horse breeding, you would not want this close to the family. The mansion sits right outside of the window here in the stable house. But this housed their famous collection of carriages, and this room would have been filled with their carriages. And then you'll see along the wall we have the tack for those carriages and horses, and it would be just a big garage. If you think about it, it's a huge garage. So we're going to talk about Bob Green. We're going to tell more of his story, but we're going to walk you over to the stables, to the stalls. So follow me. Quite the journey here. If you're selling racehorses in the 1800s for about $30,000 each, you better have some hospitality to go along with it. So above us in this room, there are apartments that the handlers would have stayed in. All of the groomsmen would have stayed there. Now they're the offices. They house the offices of Belle Meade. So come with me, we'll go into the breezeway. Now in the breezeway, we see a very modern fixture for, considering we're in the 1800s, and that this is the carriage wash. Now there was a very rudimentary pump system that pumped water up there. So when you came to visit the Hardings, you would be dropped off at the back door where there were no steps. Your carriage would pull up and you would step off onto the patio. So then your driver would bring your coach right into this breezeway area. They would tie off your horses and they would wash your coach, so that by the time you left the family, your visit end, you would come pick up your carriage here in the big garage that we just left, and it would be nice and shiny. But we are now walking into the stable area, and this would have housed the horses that pulled all of the Hardings' fine carriages. So I wanted to show off this beautiful carriage, and this carriage is called the Tally-Ho. Now the Tally-Ho is what the family would have taken to the racetrack. Why? Because they had stadium seating. This was tailgating before there was tailgating. This beautiful Tally-Ho or park drag private coach has a cooler here. It has a lead-lined cooler that would have been filled with food. It has these side lamps. These would have been filled with kerosene, and they were removable. So when the family arrived home, they would be removed and they would be walked up to the house like a flashlight. It held 10 people. 10! How can you imagine 10 people fitting up there? But there are photographs of the family up there on their way to the racetrack. This was an early day SUV, and it was used to take to the races. So wanted to show off this race day wagon. So we are standing now in the stable area of the stable house. And so we were in the garage area. This would have housed the horses. Now this was a late addition to the property here at Belle Meade. This is not the breeding facility. This was built especially to house these fine carriages, and you'll see we've got one of the best carriage collections in all of the South. Over here we have a carriage called the Victoria, and we know this brand now as the Rolls Royce, but they originally built fine carriages. So Bob Green was instrumental in the success here at Belle Meade. Bob Green could work magic with horses, and he was always paired with Bonnie Scotland. Now, Bonnie Scotland was brought here, not such a great racehorse, but he held great bloodlines from Europe, and that was where horse racing was king. And so the horse was brought here for breeding purposes, and his first 3 sons, back to back to back, won the Kentucky Derby, which really put us on the map. But while he is often photographed, I should say always photographed with Bonnie Scotland, his favorite horse here was actually called Proctor Knott. Proctor Knott was named after the governor of Tennessee. That was Bob Green's favorite horse. He was a handful. He was born ornery and was ornery into his 2-year-old racing year. He was known for throwing riders. He was known for going off the track. He was a little bit of a crazy horse, but under the handling of Bob Green, he became one of the most outstanding racehorses of its time. He won the futurity against actually a better bred horse. That it was the highlight of the racing year here at Belle Meade, and a party was thrown in honor of Bob Green. Now, Bob Green was also sent oftentimes to New York for the yearling sales to hand select horses for breeding purposes here and for horse racing. Our silks were registered with the National Registry. We cannot talk about the success of Belle Meade without talking about Bob Green. He was an American legend. European royalty sent their trainers here to study under Bob Green, and he was the toast of the town. Now, I will say, when he passed in 1906, his last request was to be buried here on property, and so the grave remains a mystery. After 1906, the decline of horse racing. We saw the decline of horse racing, and so a lot of the property began to be sold off. The paddock and the breeding facility, those are long gone. So his gravesite remains a mystery to us to this day, but his legend goes on forever. In the horse racing world, you talk about Bob Green, everyone knows who you're talking about. He was the Bob Baffert of his day before we had the modern day racing. American Legend is a lovely wine. It is a field blend. The blend is Barbera, Carignan, and Alicante Bouschet. And so we're going to talk about that when we taste the wine, but when you come to the plantation to visit us, everywhere you'll see pictures of Bob Green with the various successful thoroughbreds of this day. Bob Green, an American legend.